We've already gone through the top 20 poems of the year here on the channel, and now we are here for the last part of the top 10 short stories of the year on the channel. This video will appear in several different playlists here on the channel. Number one being the short story discussion playlist, number two being the top 5 playlist. Now, I know that there are 10 parts in this series, but there's only 5 in each video, so I'm going to let myself get away with it. And lastly, 5 books for stuff, a playlist that kind of just has a few videos in it at this point. Now, this video is for short stories 5 through 1 that appeared on the channel this year. There are videos for each of these individual short stories on the channel as they stand alone, but we are here for a brief introduction to each of them, just counting down and saying more of a reader's response to these different short stories rather than what it is that I normally do on the shorts on the channel. I normally do more of the sort of literary analysis and writer's notes from the stories themselves. Number 5 on this list is Hills Like White Elephants by Ernest Hemingway, and the brief summary from the internet that I grabbed for this. The story focuses mainly on a conversation between an American man and a young woman described as a girl at a Spanish train station while waiting on a train to Madrid. The girl compares the nearby hills to white elephants. The pair indirectly discuss an operation that the man wants the girl to have, which is implied to be an abortion. That was taboo to talk about. The short story is about that. But really, the short story is about the complex and intricate relationship between the man and the girl. Do they actually like each other? Which one of them is in control? That's sort of what the discussion that I did on the video from this year was about, was who is controlling the situation there. And I think that is a very big talking point for that short story that often gets overlooked. Here's the sad truth of the short story, though. And I don't think I've ever talked about this before. There's 2 types of people that love this short story. English professors, because they get to talk about it and look intelligent because everything they're talking about is in the story but not on the page. And that's very difficult to do in literature, and this story makes it very easy. So English professors love this short story for that reason. The other group of people that love this short story are writers. No one else likes it, and they don't have to. In fact, if you're not a writer or an English professor, probably this short story kind of sucks. But the reason writers like it is because the dialogue is oh so good in this short story. Some of it may seem trite upon reflection, but when you are in the moment with these characters, when you're actually following them through their day here in the train stop, it's good because it's real. Trite, it seems, if you're not in the moment with them. But when you're in the moment with them, you know these things are said. It's hyper-realism in that there are little bits of dialogue that are left out that are the most boring to read. But even down to where Jig says, will you please, 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 please shut up. Oh, I've heard that before, right? So that's very real. And we are left as writers to understand that the dialogue is not about what is said, it's about what is thought. Jig says, will you please, 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 7 times, I believe is the number, says please 7 times, shut up. That's more about what she's thinking than what she's saying. What she's actually thinking is, he doesn't care about me at all. I'm going to keep popping this in front of him, but he doesn't care about me at all. I can't believe we're even here because he doesn't care about me at all. Those words, by the way, are never said on the paper, that he doesn't care about me. But the story is dripping with that sentiment. The number 4 short story from this year, The Dead by James Joyce. The online summary that I grabbed for this one: The Dead is the final and longest story in James Joyce's 1914 collection, Dubliners, set during a Christmas party hosted by the Morkan sisters in the early 20th century Dublin. The narrative centers on Gabriel Conroy, their nephew, who attends with his wife Greta. Throughout the evening, Gabriel engages in conversations that reveal his social anxieties and detachment from Irish cultural nationalism. A poignant moment arises when Greta becomes deeply moved by a song performed at the gathering, leading to a revelation later that night about her youthful love, Michael Fury, who died for her sake. This disclosure prompts Gabriel to reflect on his own life, emotional limitations, and the pervasive presence of the past. Hauntology. The story concludes with Gabriel contemplating the snow falling across Ireland, symbolizing their universal nature of life and death. The universal nature, of life and death. This is a short story that I read for the very first time this year. Frankly, I hated it for the first few pages. Couldn't stand it. Very confusingly written, if you ask me. I didn't like any of the characters. But that scene between Michael and his wife at the end of the story, and really that scene between Michael and himself at the end of the story, or Gabriel and his wife at the end of the story, and Gabriel by himself at the end of the story, is kind of what you come to expect from James Joyce. It is the melancholy of the moment that we can either read as humorous in I mean, how indicative of James Joyce is that? Something terrible being just kind of funny. You can read it as kind of funny, or you can read it as a character witnessing their life crumble in a moment before them. This is a short story that I will have to revisit, and someone, I can't remember off the top of my head, so I apologize if this was you, commented on the video for that short story that they read The Dead every December. I'm not going to go that far. It was a long short story. I'm not going to go that far, but I'm going to definitely have to revisit this short story at some point in time. I think that it might be the best short story in Dubliners. I don't know if I'm going to necessarily rank all of them, especially not right here, but Araby is good. This might be right after Araby for me. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would be above this. Number 3, A Rose for Emily by William Faulkner. This is a short story that I knew I was supposed to read forever and just never did. A Rose for Emily is a Southern Gothic short story by William Faulkner, first published in 1930. Set in the fictional town of Jefferson, Mississippi, it chronicles the life of Emily Grierson, a reclusive woman from a once prominent family. The narrative unfolds non-linearly, revealing key events in Emily's life. After her controlling father's death, Emily becomes increasingly isolated. She briefly courts Homer Barron, a northern laborer, sparking gossip due to their differing social statuses. Homer disappears under mysterious circumstances, and Emily withdraws further, rarely seen by townspeople. Following Emily's death at age 74, townsfolk explore her decaying home. In a locked upstairs room, they discover Homer's decomposing corpse on a bed, alongside a pillow bearing an indentation and a strand of Emily's gray hair, implying she slept beside his body for years. The story explores themes of isolation, resistance to change, and decay of the Old South, highlighting Emily's tragic inability to adapt to societal transformations. This is about as William Faulkner a short story as you are likely to ever find, but not the most William Faulkner short story you're ever likely to find. The end, maybe in the post-psycho world, is a bit cliche. The end, in a world where we have seen so many types of horror on the golden screen, is less than startling. The development of Emily Grierson being built up by the townsfolk during the telling of this story, the swashbuckling Homer Barron being the apple of Emily's eye, and that idea that a lover would want to kill you just to keep you. Now, I am from the Midwest. I am from Missouri. The University of Missouri is part of the SEC, the Southeastern Conference. Very, very southern affair. So kind of, we're in the South. But kind of, we're in the North. A lot of it really is we are Midwestern. But I think that in the Southern Gothic, the reason I bring all that up is because I think that there's a little bit of the South sort of in the ambiance where I live. The Southern Gothic is a phenomenon. And what I mean by that is stories like this just feel true. I don't know how else to explain it. Reading authors, Junot Diaz writes a lot about settings I don't know. Not really. Kind of. I'm from a city. I kind of get it. But the ethos surrounding the characters, I don't know. Nothing else stands out. I was hoping to make a second example, but top of my head, I can't. These characters, all of their faults, all of their flaws, all of the rambunctious nature of the heroes, all of the downtrodden ways of the villains, everything in William Faulkner is very real here to me. This idea of saying, no, you are my lover. No one else can have you. And if I can't have you, we're just going to end you, and I won't have you, but I'll keep you. I'm not going to say it sounded logical. That would be a step too far. Perhaps also a step too far to say you see it coming. But it does seem to be a natural ending for both of these characters. So a very interesting short story from William Faulkner there. Someone is leaving a package at my doorstep that does not belong to me. Awesome, I'm going to have to take it to one of my neighbors. Number 2, The Battler from Ernest Hemingway. The Battler begins as Nick Adams is thrown off a train, caught as a stowaway. Nick stumbles into the forest and makes his way to the next town, where he sees a fire in the darkness. A man next to the fire greets him, asking how he got a black eye. Nick answers that he was punched off a train that he got on from Walton Junction. The man says should hit the man on the train with a rock next time he passes. Nick replies, "I'll get him." When the man compliments Nick on his toughness, he replies, Hold on. I apologize. That was far from the most professional thing I have ever done on the channel, but it was necessary. The man says he should hit the man on the train with a rock the next time he passes. Nick replies, "I'll get him." When the man compliments Nick on his toughness, he replies that you got to be tough. After this, Nick realizes that the man's face is misshapen with a smashed nose, permanently swollen lips, and one missing ear. The man then asks Nick whether he has ever been crazy and admits that "I'm not quite right," followed by "I'm crazy." Nick starts to feel uncomfortable and considers leaving until the man reveals himself to be Ad Francis, a former boxing champion. Later, Ad's African American friend Bugs comes back to the camp with their dinner. While preparing dinner, Ad asks Nick for a knife, and Bugs tells Nick not to hand it to Ad. Ad is greatly offended and becomes aggressive, saying, "You come in here where nobody asks you and eat a man's food. When he asks to borrow a knife, you get snotty." He threatens to hit Nick, but Bugs knocks him out with a blackjack. Nick asks how Ad became so crazy, and Bugs explains that Ad took too many beatings in the ring and that his wife, who the media falsely claims to be his sister, abandoned him. Shortly after, Ad became depressed and could no longer financially support himself. After this revelation, Nick leaves camp and heads towards Mansalona. Now, this short story is as if Ernest Hemingway took a Charles Bukowski poem and said, "Let's see if we can get this translated." This short story is almost exactly why I love Ernest Hemingway. The collection of characters: you have the boy trying to be a man, you have the former great man who does not want to admit that he is no longer great, and then you have Bugs, who is the best man of all three of them. Very soft spoken, going to get things done. You recognize Bugs. If you've never met a Bugs in your life, you're missing out. So, this is a short story that I like more and more every time I read it. It's a short story that I see something else in every time I read it. And so, for example, the first time I read it, I was focused on Adrian, right? The boxer. Second time I read it, it was trying to take Nick's stories into context. And this time when I read it, it was all about Bugs. And I think that is maybe not on purpose by Hemingway, but it's something that Hemingway does so well that every time you read a short story, you recognize something different. With this short story, what you're recognizing different every time you read it, in my opinion, is the characters. And the tough guy persona in Hemingway. Why do you read Hemingway? You read it for short stories like this. And perhaps unsurprisingly, number one, Barn Burning by William Faulkner. Barn Burning is a short story by William Faulkner that explores themes of loyalty, morality, and social class in post-Civil War American South. The narrative centers on 10-year-old Colonel Sartorius Sardy Snopes, who is torn between his loyalty to his father, Abner Snopes, and his own developing sense of justice. Abner, a resentful sharecropper with a penchant for burning barns as retaliation against perceived slights, faces accusations of arson. In a makeshift courtroom, Sardy is called to testify but is dismissed before he must lie to protect his father. The family is ordered to leave the county, and they relocate to work on a new plantation owned by Major Despain. Upon arrival, Abner deliberately soils an expensive rug in Despain's mansion. When tasked with cleaning it, he further damages the rug, leading Despain to impose the penalty of 20 bushels of corn. Abner contests this in court, resulting in the fine being reduced to 10 bushels. Anticipating his father's intent to burn Despain's barn in retaliation, Sardi warns Despain, who confronts Abner. Gunshots ensue implying Abner's death. The story concludes with Sardi walking away, conflicted yet resolute in his moral awakening. Absolute masterpiece of a short story. The big question here, in my opinion, is what do we inherit? What is it that we take and from who? Sardi is, in this short story, absolutely doomed. There's no way this kid is gonna make anything of himself from this family. There's no way a kid can rise from those circumstances, make something of himself, and do good, do right. Can't. No way. Except by the end of the story, the kid's only 10 and he's already doing it. He is named after someone the people around consider a great man. Is he living up to that name, or is the name living up to him? Is he doomed to be his father? Now, you can make the argument that he's more like his father than not because he's doing something crummy by giving up his own dad and getting his own dad killed. But he's also ending that cycle of abuse. Now, the family's screwed. The family is screwed without that father figure. He was the guy who drove everything. He knew how to do everything. He was the guy that constantly had work. He was the guy that constantly got kicked out of work. So who suffers here? It's a short story. I mentioned earlier about all of the characters in Faulkner feeling real in A Rose for Emily. Guys, some of this short story hits home. Some of this story reminds me of so many things from my life. And I think everybody knows a character like Sartorius' father. I think everybody knows of that guy. Whether that is very closely or distantly, everybody knows that guy. And I cannot imagine that guy appearing on paper any better than William Faulkner has written him in this short story. Anyway, guys, that is 5 through 1 of the best short stories appearing on the channel this year. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.